Well, welcome to Old Classic Car, and in this video I'll be having a little talk about a recent project, a car that I've been working on for the last few months on and off as and when I find time. Like I say, the plan has been this year is to try and find a car that's good for longer trips, something 1960s, 1970s. Now there have been a few guesses as to what that might be. All-round disc brakes was a clue I gave in a previous video, so that includes perhaps a Rover P4 or a Jaguar XJ, but it's neither of those cars, so let's go and see what I've got on board. Now the new purchase couldn't be any more different to the Anglia, which is from 1952, side valve, 4-cylinder engine, about as basic as cars can get. And its new cousin in the garage is a very different prospect. The new arrival has 6 cylinders, it's a 3-litre car, so it's obviously very different to this. Power brakes, power steering, automatic gearbox, and so on. It even has fuel injection. So my plan to stick to very simple cars isn't going entirely to plan, but never mind. So what could this mystery classic car be? It's not a Jaguar, it's not a Rover. Someone suggested maybe I should go looking at a big Humber, like a Humber Super Snipe, something like that. Again, a great option. But visitors to the site will know that I have a certain predilection towards cars of a Swedish origin. And if you've been around Old Classic Car for any length of time, you'll know that old Volvos do appear regularly on the scene, and this is a Volvo, a 6-cylinder Volvo of the early 1970s. So that can only mean one thing: the new arrival is a Volvo 164, or to be precise, Volvo 164e. That means fuel injection. This is a fuel injected 3-litre Volvo 164 saloon of 1972. If you've followed the channel for any length of time, you'll know that I've had PVs and Amazons in the past. And when I was growing up, Dad had a Volvo 144S, which was the 4-cylinder twin carburetor 140 series car, very similar shape to this, although the front wasn't quite as long and slightly different front end styling. And the registration on that car was SNE 57K. And when I found this for sale, and this is 58k, so one on from the registration of Dad's old car, it just seemed to make sense to go and snap this one up. So a deal was reached, and I went to go and retrieve this. Obviously the Morris and the Toll that went, if they hadn't gone, I wouldn't have been able to entertain buying another old car, but they did, so I could, and this is the result. It's been off the road for a couple of years, but not to worry, it's almost ready to go back on. It belonged to a gentleman who was very keen on his old Volvos. He regularly did the Volvo shows. He was an active member of the Volvo Enthusiasts and the Volvo Owners Club. And he had a lot of work done to this particular car. It was partially restored bodily, at least about 6-7 years ago. I think it had new front wings. I think the sills were done. I know that the rear wheel arches were also done, which is a weakness on these particular cars. And they did a good job of it. It's quite clean underneath still. And it was resprayed, and most of that is holding up well. She's quite dusty because it's been sat in the garage for a little while I've been tinkering with it on and off, so I'll give it a wash while it's outside today. But let's just have a quick look around and just see what it is that I've bought. The man was very keen on his accessories, and he even went to the extent of putting these plastic things on the back edge of the doors just to protect them. Although whether it's actually improved matters, I don't know, because it just traps dirt and moisture behind them, so I'll be taking those off. Have a quick look in the interior. It had awful seat covers. There's one over there. Well, it had 2 sets of seat covers actually. That's the under one. I threw the other ones away. The original seats aren't too bad. Let's have a look in here. Oh, I think that's locked. But yeah, and there's the proper dashboard. It's all standard Volvo 164. This is a slidey thing that you can set to remind you of the current speed limit for the road that you're on. So you pop it there for 60 like a British A road, and there you go. So the interior is very original. The radio still works even. It's probably an 80s radio, so it's not that in keeping, but it'll do for now. There's a few extra gizmos on here, and if you know your LPG, you'll recognise this little thing here, which is the switchover button and the fuel level gauge for the LPG conversion which this car has been fitted with. It doesn't actually appear to work at the moment, but maybe we'll reinstate that, or maybe we'll just get it all removed, because it just adds complexity, and unless you're doing a huge mileage, do you really need it? This is an aftermarket digital tachometer, rev counter, that the previous owner put on. Like I say, he was very keen on his optional extras, and there are all manner of extra bits of wiring and switches and all sorts of things, some of which I will remove as time goes by. It's got 134,000 miles on it, which I'm sure is correct, but the engine still sounds sweet as a nut. When I first picked the car up, it would start, but it was very lumpy. It had a regular misfire, but fresh fuel and regular running on a regular basis, it seems to have smoothed out quite a lot. We've got a sunroof, manual wind open sunroof. This all needs a bit of a scrub, but not to worry. We've got a modern electric aerial type thing, and an electronic antenna, it says there, so that might have to go. Like I said, there's lots of fiddly little upgrades it's had. There's extra switches and bits which don't seem to actually do anything, so gradually I'll work my way around those and just tidy that up and clean them all off and remove them. So I'll quick look in the back. It's fairly tidy in there. It's got these ghastly seat covers in, but if we end up carrying a dog in here, I might just leave those on, a few bits and pieces, but overall it's quite clean inside. And like I say, this takes me back to the 1970s when Dad had a 144S. We used to go on holiday to South Wales with a trailer on the back and have many splendid times. And when I saw this, I thought, yeah, that'll be a bit of a giggle. So I didn't tell Dad that I was buying it. I just sprung it upon him one day when he came round to see what I'd end up buying, and he was quite amused by it. I don't know how many of these are still on the road. Perhaps someone knows for sure. I can't imagine there are many. It's a long time since I've ever seen a 164 in regular use. Occasionally they pop up at local shows, but generally speaking they seem to be pretty few and far between. So this ticks most of the boxes really. Something comfortable, something long-legged, decent size engine, 3 litre straight 6, which we'll have a look at in a minute, auto, power steering, so it doesn't get much comfier than this. Like I say, the other option was maybe another XJ. I've had Series 1 XJs in the past, and they're a lot plusher inside, with a lovely old circular dials in the middle there and 2 large ones here. But I've kind of done that one already, admittedly, a few years ago. And I thought I'd go for the sort of the Volvo equivalent. I've seen road tests comparing the 2.8 XJ with this, the 3 litre Volvo 164. But they're very, very different car. The Swedish approach is very minimalist. It has got carpets underneath these sort of rubber mats, but it's a lot more minimalist. It's not the plush luxury of a Jaguar or a Humber or a Rover, for example. It's quite basic, clean lines, a bit like furniture of the 1950s, 1960s Swedish furniture. It's very much in that style. So it's not for everyone, but I quite like it actually. It's quite simple, it's well laid out, organised, apart from the fact the radio is a mile away over there, which isn't perhaps the greatest piece of ergonomics ever, but overall I think it's got the makings of a good car. Like I say, it was last on the road in I think 2018, and the MOT history is quite good for it, so that's always a promising sign. So let's go and have a look under the bonnet and the power plant that lurks beneath it. This is the B30e Engine, E for fuel injection. This is Bosch D-Jetronic injection hiding away under this huge air filter. And there's been, like I say, there's been lots of little additions. We've got a battery cut up. I mean, look at this wiring. I mean, good heavens, I'm not quite sure what's been going on here. Someone's put LED bulbs in here, and I think this is something to do with it. High intensity discharge system. So all that'll have to come off because they look ghastly. They don't work very well. Over this side it's a lot clearer. Like I say, the fuel injection is over there, as is the extra plumbing for the LPG, which again I could probably live without. There's a brake servo over here. We've just been bleeding up the rear brakes recently. He's put a klaxon type horn on here, which will have to go because that sounds ridiculous on a car of this age. And hidden away under there I think is the electronic ignition, which has been subtly weatherproofed by cutting out an old plastic bottle and sticking it over with a bit of tape. So cosmetically under the bonnet there are a few improvements that can be made, but I thought I'd just show the car more or less as collected. I've tidied it up a little bit, cleaned it up a little bit here and there, but nothing too extreme. One of the first jobs I did, which was totally useless really, was all the badges that were on the front. It had 4 badges, not necessarily all these. I think Well, that one and that one were on it, and the others were Volvo clubs and things which I'm not even in, but all the screws were rusty and everything, so took all that apart, cleaned the bar up, cleaned up these original Desmo badge brackets, cleaned up the badges themselves, and put it all back together with new screws, just because the originals were all rusty, because the car lived outside, even though it was restored 6-7 years ago, whatever. It lived outside in like a communal parking area, so there are one or two cosmetics that need doing, but overall it's a very sound, very solid car. The inner wings are good. They can tend to rot out up here and where the bonnet hinges bolt through. This is all good, so I've just sprayed a bit of oil around for now, so that's all quite encouraging. And if you peer under here, like I say, I think these front wings are new replacements, because it's all, you can't really, probably can't really see very well, but there's no build-up of mud anywhere. It's all very clean, and these are bolt-on. I think they've probably been replaced. If I look along the length of it, it's actually, the body is really straight on it. Whether the doors have been reskinned, I'm not sure, but they're all in good order. And like I say, the sills have been done, so that's something else to tick off the list. Like I say, the back arches it's had, which is great, and they're all still clean, so I've slopped a load of wax oil and gunge under there just to help protect those. Period accessories such as the proper tinted Volvo rear view door mirrors. Is this one open? Yes. So you can see it's all very clean down here. It's had, these have all been replaced, repainted obviously. Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. Like I say, it's a flashback for me, a bit of a blast from the past, having one of these boxy Volvos, and while it is a little bit boxing, it's certainly a lot boxier compared to the PV444 that I used to run. I'm hoping that this is going to be a lot more usable car. The 444 was a great looking car, but it was a bit low geared, and it never seemed to drive quite as nicely as the 544 that I used to have, which now belongs to someone else on the old classic car forum. Reading period road tests, these were quite well regarded cars back in the day. Obviously it was like a facelifted version of the 140 series, done not on the cheap, but rather than investing in a totally new model, they just took the existing 140 and elongated the front and shoehorned the 3-litre engine in. The B30 is literally a B20 Amazon engine, but with the 2 extra cylinders added, making it into a 3-litre. The early cars were on twin carburetors, and then fuel injection came along as an option in about 1972-73. So what other jobs have we done on it so far? Like I say, a few cosmetics here and there and under the bonnet just to try and improve things. The main work so far has been at the back. It's had new calipers on the front, so the brake calipers on the front are new, and on the other side at the back it looks fairly recent too, but this one, there was just nothing happening at all. It was an old rusty caliper and it clearly wasn't going to do anything. So I bought a new one, put that on, but when I removed the metal pipe that feeds to it, it all chewed up and it just didn't come apart properly at all. So if you've seen the previous video where I'm remake and flare up a brand new brake pipe, this is where it is now. It's on the back of here. So I bled this up the other day. There don't appear to be any leaks, and I've also replaced the rubber flexes which go in the back behind the wheel and obviously feed each of the rear brakes. I found that they had both collapsed internally, gone hard and collapsed internally, so they were no use. I've put fresh ones on. I tried bleeding it up with the old caliper and brake fluid just poured out, so that's why I had to replace the caliper and then the pipe as well while I was at it. So now it's got brakes all the way around and they seem to work. They come off as they should do, so that's all quite encouraging. It's got a stainless exhaust, so that's one less thing to do, and the tyres are good. And like I say, it was in use until about 2-3 years ago, something like that. I was speaking to the chap that used to look after it on behalf of the elderly gent that actually owned the car, and he said they used to change the engine oil twice a year regardless of the mileage, and it was only doing a few hundred miles every year anyway, so the engine appears to be in quite good shape. So let's just see if it'll start up and you can hear it for yourself. Right, so it's in park, otherwise it won't start. There we go, fuel pump's all primed up. There we go. There's the digital tacho, which does jar a little bit, but it is quite a useful thing, but it just looks awful. But it can stay for now. Let's have a look under the bonnet. Now, to my mind, that is a very smooth running engine. Like I say, there was a very distinct misfire when I first bought the car, and there's thoughts of maybe a sticking valve or stuck rings or something like that, but it all seems to be improving as I run it more and more. Let's just have a quick rev of it. So that sounds like a very healthy engine to me, even though it shows about 134,000 miles. There's a lot of life left in that engine, I believe. Whether it's been rebuilt at some point, I don't know. Although looking at the general grime on the side of the engine, if it has been rebuilt ever, it's not been recently. The previous custodian who looked after it on behalf of the previous owner, they were neighbours, looks like he's fitted a new alternator at some point. I know he put new plugs in it the day before I picked it up, which was nice of him. And generally, I think it's been quite well looked after. Like I say, the old guy he liked his extra bits of wiring. So this is all going to need tidying up, because it isn't pretty. I could have lived without the electronic ignition, but as it's on, it might as well stay. To my mind, it just adds complexity. Same with the LPG. But I think I will leave most of it as it is for now, and then just find my feet with it and just see how well it runs once it's been used a little bit. But like I say, I had a look online and I found a photo of it at a Volvo enthusiast rally back in 2018. So it obviously made it there. I think it just needs a bit of use, to be honest. So while they are a little bit boxy still, they're not as boxy as the later 240s. And I think this front end styling works really well with a very deep grille. And the guy who was the chief stylist who took the 140 and made it into the 164, he used a Wolseley, I believe, as inspiration with this grille. Later 164s had a shallower grille, but this is a fairly early one. And it's got the nicer, deeper grille, which I think looks quite nice with a dip in the front bumper as well. I think it's quite a handsome looking car, and even though it's quite boxy, there are enough curves on it, I think, to make it, quite acceptable. I like the way the front end comes out here. So you've got like a pronounced snout, whereas on the 140, the 144, etc., this goes straight across here. And you had various different styles of trim on the front, depending on the year of the 140. And the 164 did go through a few evolutions itself. Over time, this bumper straightened out, it went straight across, and the grille became shallower. And then they put bigger and bigger, huge bumpers on. So by the time the last cars were made in, 73, 74, something like that, the bumpers were huge, chunky things. And the back lights, whereas this has got the fairly elegant looking rear lamps. Not been round here yet, have we? I quite like the back end styling of these. I think they're quite a classy looking car, but on the later ones they went to much bigger, blockier lamps across here, and like I say, the bumpers came out sort of yay far. They were huge things. I also referred in the previous video, when I gave a few clues about this car, to the number plates. It's got these horrible plastic number plates which just don't suit it at all, with the England flag on, which, I mean, that's alright, but the plates themselves are ghastly. So I've had some nice metal plates made up, reflective still, with the raised separate letters on, and they've come out really nicely, so they will look so much better on the back of the car. So changing those isn't a priority, obviously, but I will change them fairly soon. Yeah, I think it's quite a nice car. When it's clean, it looks better again. I mean, it's so dusty on the roof, it's just incredible. It's really filthy, but she's running quite well now. And it's nice just to have something a little bit newer to tinker with. I mean, I love the Anglia, I love the old pre-war stuff that I've still got, and it's nice to have something that's just a little bit later to tinker with as well. Something that hopefully will be quite a usable car. Plus, there's plenty of room in the back for all our stuff for the day if we go to shows or whatever. So there it is. That's the latest project, a Volvo 164 from 1972, or to be precise, a Volvo 164e. in a fetching metallic blue. So please let me know in the comments what you think of this. Like I say, I've always been a bit in two minds about the 140s because they are starting that very boxy shape, and compared to the Amazons and the PVs I've had, they're a world away. But I think this is actually quite a handsome, understated car, and I'd like your comments. You know, let me know in the comments what you think. You know, like I say, they're not for everyone, but it's quite a rare car, and I like rare and slightly unusual vehicles. Just like the Anglia here, these are not that common, especially in this sort of oily rag condition. While this isn't in oily rag condition, it's been restored quite significantly in previous years. I think it's a nice looking car. So that's it for now. Thanks very much for watching the video, and more videos on the Volvo and other classic cars coming along very soon. Bye bye.